Revelation Explained Plus, a weekly series where we will be diving deeper into the book of Revelation. Joining Pastor Gary this week, we have Pastor Buzz Offenbacker of Smith Mountain Lake Bible Church. Let's join them now.
And today, I am really blessed to have my good friend and a guy I admire and respect greatly, Buzz Offenbacker, who was on staff with us here and pastored the Word Fellowship Bible Church right here in Williamstown, actually, for 10 years. And he is now in Virginia and pastoring a church down there. Buzzy, give us a quick update on what's going on down there.
Well, it's been quite a year, as you know, with all of that's going on in our culture and in our country. But it's been a good year. It's really kind of forced us to move into areas that we hadn't or didn't normally think of moving into, especially in the area of technology.
Right.
It's been good. And so we've been able to reach a lot more people through our technology as we're doing our services here at the church. So it's been really, really good.
Awesome.
We haven't recovered yet. It's going to take a while. I mean, some churches down here haven't even opened up after a year.
Yeah.
And, so it's a little different here down in Virginia, but things are going great. God is good, and He uses the adversities as well as the good times to teach us and to move us ahead.
That is the truth. I'm amazed. Like even up here, we still have some churches that haven't gotten back in. So I don't know why, but I think churches need to be open and functioning. But anyway, let's get started where we are here. Revelation Explained Plus. And Buzzy, I know that one of your heart desires is to teach the book of Revelation, teach prophecy. You were just explaining to me down at the church down there how you're going to go back into Daniel, and then from Daniel into Revelation. And I know that you love talking about these things, and I admire that because in the days we live today, there's not many churches that like to tackle the issue. In fact, I talked to a guy I respect greatly who just retired, been with his church for years and years and years, and he said, I never taught the book of Revelation, not once in 27 years or something did he ever teach the book of Revelation. And he's a great man of God. I love him greatly, but I don't quite understand that mentality. I think you have to teach these things, and because I think there's so much for the world we live in today that's explained. Wouldn't you agree?
I definitely agree, especially in light of everything that is going on. I have so many people, not only within our church, but outside the church, that are asking questions regarding the end times. You know, what does all of this mean? And it's interesting. And if you read the news or listen to the news, and if you look at it in light of prophecy, we're living in some exciting times.
Yeah.
We're seeing it unfolded right before our very eyes.
Yeah, exciting. And if you don't have an idea, whether you're a believer or not, if you don't have an idea of what's going on, it could be very fearful. It could be frightening for people and these are believers. Look, the unsaved world, the unregenerated world, I understand. I understand why they would be scared to death. But for the believer, this is our, as it says in Titus, the blessed hope. This is the blessed hope that we're watching, I think, unfolding in front of us. But anyway, I brought you in today and wanted to talk to you a little bit about the seals in Revelation chapter 6. We see the
You're not talking about Navy SEALs now, right? You're talking about the seals in Revelation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Buzz, you always remind me of a Navy SEAL.
Right.
So, yeah, absolutely. Feed you some fish and
a SEAL on his last days is what it is.
Hey, praise the Lord. We should all be, right? So praise the Lord for that. But but obviously, I think when we look at the seals, you got to go back to chapter 5 and establish a little bit more credential there. So I'm gonna ask that we start there in 5, and I'll read a little bit of it to you. And I'd love to get some of your thoughts as we open 5. Of course, chapter 4. I believe you believe as I do, and that's the church is taken to heaven in chapter 4, verse 1. Come up here, metatauta after these things, church history. And then we get into chapter 5, and we're seeing this scene in heaven. And chapter 5, verse 1 says, "And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals." First question, of course, is what do you make of that scroll? What is your opinion about that scroll?
Well, I believe that the scroll, the seven sealed scroll, I believe is the title deed to the earth.
Yeah.
And because who is in charge of the earth right now? I mean, Satan is the prince and power of the air, right? And that happened when Adam sinned and all of that happened. But when Jesus now appears there at the throne, the picture is of God in his right hand holding that scroll, this 7-year scroll, sealed scroll. And so you're going to talk about that in just a minute. So the voice, the shout comes out, from the throne, who is worthy to open this? And it has to be because the events that unfold after each opening of the seal, events that happen on earth. And eventually what Christ comes back and he is the owner and the leader of the earth. And so this is the beginning of it. And so we're seeing it step by step. And again, I just want to remind, not only myself and you, but those who are listening, that the book of Revelation, I believe, is written to us, but I believe it is also given to us chronologically. From chapter 1 right on through chapter 22, I believe we got a chronology of the events that are happening in order as they unfold in the end times. And of course, as you go throughout the Revelation, you'll see the chronology going on, and all of a sudden there's a break, there's a commercial break as we're introduced to some characters or to clarify an event that just happened. And then the chronology happens again. And so
what you're saying is, the book of Revelation really isn't that difficult to understand as long as you'll take it in the way that it's written.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was written cryptically. I don't believe you needed a Dick Tracy decoder ring to be able to decipher it. I mean, I believe it was written for the common.
You have a bunch of 20-somethings right now going, Dick Tracy decoder ring. What the heck is he talking about?
Who the heck is that? He's in the White House, by the way. No. But and I believe that we also need to interpret it literally. I don't think, again, you don't need that decoder ring.
Right.
And again, someone once said that if, we need to interpret the scriptures literally unless it doesn't make sense. And then there has to be some spiritual meaning behind it. Like when Jesus said, I am the bread of life. He didn't mean that he was an actual loaf of bread. He just meant that, take of me and you'll have sustenance. And so I believe that's the way we need to interpret Revelation.
If he's a loaf of bread, he's Wonder Bread, isn't he?
Yeah, that's right. Wonderful bread.
Wonderful bread. So as we talk about this, then you're saying with the seals, you've already established your opinion, which I agree with. It's something to do with the deed to the earth. And of course, the reacquiring that. A strong angel comes and basically shouts out, who can do this? I saw a strong angel. So it's not a matter of being able to open the seals by strength and power, because you clearly have a strong angel that's there who could have done that. But he is saying who is worthy to open the scroll and to loose its seals. And no one in heaven or on the earth or even under the earth. So in other words, what's being said is they couldn't find anybody who was worthy to do this. What makes Jesus Christ worthy to do this?
Well, he's the Son of God. And the fact that he paid the price for our redemption. He is what? Our kinsman redeemer. We're going through the book of Ruth now in one of our Sunday school classes. We're talking about the kinsman redeemer. He's the only one that could do that. And so Jesus appears and he is the only one. In fact, all of heaven acknowledges that. And I think it all moves in that direction as, everybody looks around and John is weeping because no one is found worthy to open this up. And so it's almost, now I wonder, let me ask you this. I wonder if the angels know who it is.
That is funny because it's, is this all for theater effect? Is this angels saying this just because there's oftentimes in the scriptures, this, that Jesus would do something and just basically say, I have to do this to fulfill the scripture. I have to do this to fulfill it. So is that part of it? I don't know. But it seems like no one seems to understand who is worthy until Christ steps up. I mean, so yeah, that's a great question. I wouldn't even be able to give you the answer to that other than the fact that there does seem to be there does seem to be some reason to believe that maybe that angel doesn't, or that angel is just posing the question to provide the effect that you obviously get out of all this. So
yeah, I mean,
anyway, we know the effect it has on John, because in verse 4 there, John says, I wept much because no one was found worthy to open and read the scroll or even to look at it. But one of the elders, of course. But see, now you have an elder who realizes something. He says, don't weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has prevailed to open the scroll and to loose its 7 seals. So it seems at that moment when that elder, now who's that elder? I don't know. I believe the elders in this instance are probably, they're definitely representation of the church that are there, but are there also elders that are representation of the Old Testament? I don't preach that dogmatically, but I do believe that there are those who are familiar with the church that are there too. So
I agree.
So you and I, it's interesting, the church will be there watching this happen.
Yeah, because John is representing the church here, right? You know, when he's called up in chapter 4, verse 1, he is literally there here, but
every place else, it's Jesus, because we know
this. Don't you read?
Yeah, we've seen this, we know. So it's obviously because they have the lamb as if was slain, literally the word there is slaughtered. And that's what Jesus's presentation will be. He will be the lamb as if slain, which is really powerful when you stop and think about it. So we've established then that Jesus Christ, we've established that the scroll, the deed to the earth, we've established that there was only one that was worthy to open that. And of course, that's Jesus Christ. Later in that particular chapter 5, we'll move on from 5, but we see that there was this beautiful outburst of worship, this ascribing to Jesus Christ. Chapter 4, we really worship God the Father. Chapter 5, we're really worshiping God the Son. And this is what we're seeing in the songs that we're singing and all that goes on and on and on. Living.
If you can imagine with me, Garrett, this worship service, it's in verse 13, it says, and I heard every creature in heaven, on earth, under the earth, and in the sea. Now, is that talking about animals and fish? I mean, is it talking about every creature there? And to me, that has to be, can you imagine a singing fish? I mean, or a worm singing? You know,
you remember the incredible Mr. Lippet with Don Knotts when you're younger? Yeah, right. I'm not sure I don't know if that's speaking. I don't know if what's being said there, like, is metaphorically speaking or just it's verbiage, almost like poetry to encapsulate everything. In other words, every place you go, there was no one worthy to do this, and now everybody is worshiping him. So whatever that means there, but it is a powerful statement. And so let's go over to 6 now, and let's discuss chapter 6, because I think now we're going to get into the crux, into the meat of. Let me just change my chapter over. I think we're getting in now to the idea of what these seals are really going to look like. And I don't know about you, but I certainly don't take I don't take great pleasure in reading about the seals, just because it's going to be such a time of devastation,
Well, yeah, I mean, and this is just the beginning, right? I believe, this is my personal belief, that the actions that happen as a result of the opening up of each seal are actually man-induced. I don't think this is the wrath of God yet. I believe what we're going to be seeing as each seal is open, a process of what's going to be happening at the beginning of these first 3.5 years. I mean, look at the process that we've gone through just within this past year with the COVID happening, about this time last year, and the process that we've gone through where everyone has to wear masks, everyone has to do this,
right.
Everyone can't go there. And so we're going to see a series of processes as each seal is unfolded. But I don't think these happenings are coming from heaven. I believe these are happenings that occur on earth as the first 3.5 years.
As a result of sin, is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, as a result of sin. But I mean, once the church is gone, can you imagine the mayhem?
Oh my goodness!
I mean, just
he wants the restrainers out of here.
Yeah, I mean, look at what happens now when there's an earthquake or when there's a fire or when something happens. You know, the rioting and looting and all of that occurs, and so somebody's going to have to appear on the scene, and so these processes are going to be happening, I believe, naturally. And we're given a picture of this as each seal is opened. That process moving ahead on earth after the rapture.
Well, so we're establishing now in chapter 6 then, John has been weeping. He now knows who is able to open those seals, dramatic scene in heaven. And now we're seeing this being played out literally in front of our eyes. And John opens and says, now I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals. So now the deed and, what I've studied and learned about this scroll is what's being written on it with the seals that are being opened. It's basically what has to happen to reacquire, to purchase back, to do whatever you want to call it, the deed, as it were. And so we see where the cherubim, one of the living creatures with a voice like thunder, come and see. And I looked, and behold, the first thing we noticed there is a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering to conquer. Now, the two schools of thought here is one, this is Jesus Christ based on chapter 19, verse 1, where Jesus shows up on a white horse. Some take that to mean that this is also Christ. I would imagine you probably believe the way I believe, and that ain't Christ. Who is it?
Well, obviously it's the Antichrist. It looks like Christ, right?
Yes.
It's on a white horse, and it's coming almost as a victor. It's holding a bow without arrows. He was given a crown, and so from the outside, I mean, he looks like the Messiah. He looks like the one that, Israel's been waiting for. And so he appears on the scene.
Let me ask you a couple questions about this guy. Since you've established, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, that this is Antichrist. What is it then, as we see him on a white horse just meaning victory, that he's celebrating victories at this point. He who sat on it had a bow, but no arrows. What do you make of having a bow with no arrows?
Well, I think what's happening here is the fact he's coming, or he appears to come as a man of peace. And so he doesn't need arrows, and so he's coming, and so people aren't threatened by him. First of all, there's unbelievable chaos happening on the earth, and so here comes someone who man, looks like he has the answer. He's got a crown. He seems to have all of the answer, and he's wearing a crown on his head. By the way, the crown here is a Stephanos, not a diadem that Christ would wear.
And Jesus comes back wearing a diadem. This guy's wearing the Stephanos, right?
And the crown was given to him. Well, Jesus wouldn't have a crown given to him. He's already wearing the crown.
Amen.
And so we see several things here, clues, at least to the believer, saying, this guy looks good, he sounds good, but you know what? He ain't good.
Right. So the conquering and to conquer, what's he conquering right now? Is his world, right at this point, his world's not war. His world is diplomacy, right? He's conquering diplomatically.
Well, yeah, he's going to be the man that has the answers. Remember now, there's unbelievable chaos that's happening worldwide. I mean, just not locally, not in one place, but worldwide because of the rapture. There's a lot of confusion. And so all eyes are looking to someone who has the answer to all of the disappearance of people that have come on. And so he's going to come at first as a man who will have, I believe, the answers to all of the confusions. Perhaps one of those answers would be, now that those Christians are gone, the troublemakers, now we can have peace.
Just as a side note, maybe a little bit of a rabbit trail. When you think of the Antichrist, where do you believe the Antichrist is coming out of? Do you have a thought on that? I know some people believe he's revived Roman Empire because of his people. It's going to be coming back from his people, which some believe that's going to be Rome. Somewhere, you have the two legs. You have the Western Empire, the Eastern Empire. Do you have any thoughts on the Antichrist?
I've read so many things about this.
Yeah,
Some
right.
say that he's going to be a Jewish person. Some people believe he's going to be an Arab person. Some people believe that he's going to be a mixture of all of them, so that he will be able to identify with these different people groups. I don't know if I have a clear thought on that. All I know is that he's going, and you know what? He may be alive today, even right now.
I was going to ask you that. Do you think he's around? Because he'd have to be. If we're in the last of the last days, he would almost have to be, right?
Well, there's nothing else that really needs to occur prophecy-wise before the rapture happens, right? I don't know of any.
No, I don't believe there is.
I think the time is right. I mean, we look at our weaponry, we look at our technology, what we're able to do, what we're able to destroy. I mean, all of these things that are going to happen during the tribulation period.
And the temple could be rebuilt in a matter of, it takes no time. By the time the Antichrist sets himself up to be worshipped 3.5 years after I think that the tribulation starts, that temple could be rebuilt quickly in 3.5. It wouldn't take them any time at all there. By the way, here there's some stirrings about that again. There's Arab nations that are starting to say, yeah, we would allow Israel to rebuild their temple, which would be fitting into the prophetic is what it would be. I think Saudi Arabia was one of them. And I think there's such a fear of Iran over there right now that many of these nations see Israel as their best option to fight, which, by the way, as you and I are speaking, they're going through their political process to whether they're going to reelect Netanyahu or some other party. It's all very convoluted and crazy over there. But
it's interesting. You talked about the rebuilt temple. There's a verse in the book of Acts that talks about restore to us the tent of David. And there are some who believe that the temple, the new temple, will start out as David's tent.
Wow.
David just had the tent there with the Ark of the Covenant there. And so
that would be very interesting.
David had praise and worship going 24 hours a day there when
David wanted to build that temple so bad.
Yeah. And so he had the next best thing was the tent.
Yeah, the tent.
So there are some who believe that the temple will get built very, very quickly. Why? Because it will start out as a tent. Just like the book of Acts says, restore to us the tent of David.
It does get into the idea you don't have to rebuild the courtyards. You don't have to, it's just what I read and surmise between Ezekiel and what's being said here is that you're talking about a building that will basically just house the elements that need to be housed. And of course, the Holy of Holies need to be there. And you don't need all the extras around it, which would fit into that area that's up there. But anyway, so he's coming to conquer. And then what we see then is in typical deception, the second seal then in verse 3 there, when he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, come and see. And another horse, fiery red. I did a little word study there on fiery red because I thought that was interesting. And the word there is pyros or puros. And it's the idea of just that, like flickering flame. So the color of this horse is really bold. You can't miss. It's not like some dread red. It's real bright and it's very colorful. It pops. That horse goes out and it was granted to the one who sat on it. Now, my question for you is this. I've heard people say that they believe the Antichrist is the one who rides each of these horses. It's just a different phase and what he's going to do. In other words, he starts out with peace and now he's going to bring conflict on the earth. Or do you think it's just a totally separate rider? And it's not that it matters a whole lot, but I just find it interesting. That's all.
And again, if you believe that Revelation is given to us chronologically, and I do believe that, I believe what's happening now is the process. As the process continues, peace is not good enough. And so he needs to then, through this process of his eventual goal, right, is world domination. Right. The next process is war. What peace is not working. There's people who are rebelling. There's people who are saying, no, we're not going to do it. Well, I believe maybe perhaps what we're given here is the picture of limited warfare because that seems to be the next step.
Now, it's interesting. If you notice what it says there, and I agree with you in verse 4, another horse, fiery red, it was granted to the one who sat on it to do what? To take peace from the earth. In other words, even when the UN and world leaders try to establish peaceful means, like, we sanction, we stand against the invasion of this country against this country, blah, blah, blah. Well, the guy who is the Antichrist is going to do all he can to keep taking peace from the earth. He doesn't want there to be peace, right?
Well, no, because he knows that not everybody's going to agree with him. Not everybody is going to eventually worship him. And so the next obvious step is limited warfare. Now, how does he do that? Well, he's given a large sword. So it's not just small. I mean, this is a large sword, and making people kill each other. Interesting. Maybe perhaps he sanctions warfare, one country against another, one people group against another, with him kind of controlling the strings behind the scenes, just like our shadow government, controlling the things behind the scenes. Maybe perhaps this is what's happening here, and so we see warfare. Now, is this regional warfare? Is it worldwide? I don't know. Perhaps maybe it's just where there's the most resistance against him. And so that's what
something to that. You're right. And then that would fit the narrative. Like you're saying, peace was given, faulty peace. We know at the beginning when where he's going to establish, it says what in the book of Daniel, doesn't it? In chapter 9, where it talks about he's going to make a covenant and it's going to be shaky peace. He's going to promise peace. And of course, Israel is going to fall for it. Israel's going to say, we're willing to take peace at any cost, which, our founding fathers said, if you show me a people that's willing to trade safety for their freedom, they don't deserve either of them. And I think that's what's going on in the world at the time.
Well, if you look at history, the past 75 years, I mean, every president since Israel became a nation has tried to broker some sort of peace agreement in the Middle East. And so perhaps maybe his peace deal with Israel, the 7-year peace deal, will be the trigger that will draw people's attention to him, because he was able to accomplish, what no other president has been able to do. That's broker this peace deal with Israel that allows them to worship freely. And
Menachem Begin, one of the prime ministers, one of the leaders of Israel, said basically on his deathbed, the worst decision, they asked what was his worst decision. He said the worst decision was trading land for peace. And and you're right, they all did it. And sadly, they all suffered as a result of it.
If you'd like to hear more on this topic, the previous Sunday's sermon is always available on our YouTube channel. Please consider subscribing so you can always stay up to date on our latest content. Again, the church would like to thank Pastor Buzz Offenbacker for joining us this week. Be sure to join us either in person or here on YouTube for a live stream service at 9:30. We hope to see you there.